I'm back at Paulinskill Viaduct, and it looks like they have some new artwork here. I don't remember that SYZYGY with what appears to be pictures of planets being here. So Mercury, Venus, Earth, that would probably be Earth's moon around it, Mars, Jupiter. That doesn't exactly look like Saturn. Looks like we're missing Saturn, but there's a Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Yep, Pluto is most definitely a planet. Some guys right here wrote Pluto, uh, something planet, something. Yeah, and that looks like that's Jupiter right there, which is strange because it looks like Jupiter is out of position. Apparently that's Saturn right there, but its rings are nowhere near as pronounced as it is in the pictures. That must be Uranus, that must be Neptune, and Jupiter is in the wrong position. But yeah, that purple thing there is Pluto. I also noticed that that's a police car with signs saying art is not a crime, which given that this is basically abandoned, I'd say drawing on it probably isn't too big of a crime. Not, I'm actually kind of undecided if the artwork adds to it, or I guess if it's in its ruined state as it is now, the artwork probably adds to it. But if I would ideally prefer they actually just restored it and repainted and restored it to its original form. There's another one, a Jurassic Park vehicle. What have they got in there? King Kong? That's supposed to be a play on how large this thing is. I mean, you could fit King Kong in there. And over there, I remember the Pink Panther and the Scarecrow were there before. I think we'd sympathize with these artists a lot more if they actually cleaned up the garbage after themselves. This one is also new. It looks like it's a pair of cats, one dressed as a nurse, one sitting in a garbage can, and it says, "We're both garbage." I don't know if that heart was there. It looks like that heart was pretty old, so maybe it was. But yeah. And this is on the second arch, which is right before the river. I did learn a couple things about this railroad bridge since the last time. Of interest is the fact that this railroad bridge not only went over the Paulinskill River, but it also went over a second railroad, which was the railroad built by Blair from Blairstown. I think it was initially known as Blair's Railroad, and it traveled from Blairstown, which is east of here, all the way to Delaware, New Jersey, in that direction. So west of here, where it would have met with the original Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. And even though Blair constructed this railroad, it was eventually bought out through a series of mergers, became the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railroad. So that would have gone under the Paulinskill Viaduct. And I believe there may have even been a station around here as well. All of that in the shadow of this large bridge viaduct here. So the New York, Susquehanna, and Western would have basically been a more local railroad that just serviced local traffic from towns like Blairstown, while the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western would have been a main route from New York up through Delaware the Delaware Water Gap into Pennsylvania. I also see an FJB here. Wonder what that stands for. Maybe it stands for Fantastic Job Brandon. I also see a Trump 2024. And this guy here was, I believe this guy with the egg on his head or whatever it was here last time. I noticed this piece of stonework here, and I'm right over here, the viaduct is right there. And I wonder if this might have been somehow related to the New York Susquehanna and Western Station. So there's this stonework here with this pole in it, and there's another piece of concrete over there. And there's this, well, this wall here, and then there's this bed in here, this circular or this square shaped foundation here with ruins of stones in them. So it would be the right place for something related to the Blair Railroad or the New York Susquehanna and Western Railroad. This stone structure itself would be in the right position to be part of the New York Susquehanna and Western Railroad as well, because I believe that this pathway here used to form the bed of that railroad. So this pathway here, which goes under the viaduct, so that's the base of the viaduct, that's the other base of the viaduct, and this is now a Paulinskill walking trail, but I believe that this was the path of that railroad. And there's a gate, and yeah, the Paulinskill Valley Trail. And this stone structure would have been right next to it, so I imagine this was related to that railroad. It may have even been the station that was in the shadow of the Paulinskill Viaduct. And there's actually an old telephone pole, which, if I look up there, there's telephone wires, and that telephone pole is part of wires that would be traveling along this trail. So, yeah. This image shows what the station would have looked like with the viaduct in the background. The position of the station is consistent with where the ruins are located, so I think I can say with some certainty that these ruins were the foundation of the Blairstown Railroad station. And here at the entrance to the top of the viaduct, I see this here. I came to a high place. I believe that that's a Bible verse. Not completely certain though. And I don't think this "I will return" was there last time. This one here is also new. It's Crayola spray-ons. And here's the view from the top. It's a much nicer day than the last time. There's no snow or anything. That's the Delaware Water Gap right there. Probably Mount Tamaray. And somebody made some artwork with some Tide bottles. That's kind of interesting. Looks like some of the bottles are now missing, so it's a bit hard to decipher what it actually said, but looks like it's M-A-K-E. Oh, make art. That's exactly what it says. And here's some old Nintendo Game Boys. So 2 pink and 2 blue. So we're probably about a third of the way over. So right now I'm guessing we're over either the road, I believe it's called Station Road, or over the path of the original New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railroad. And that clearing in the trees there is where the Paulinskill River is. Now, looking at the height of this, one thing to note is that the Lackawanna cutoff, which this viaduct carried, was pretty much a straight, flat railroad. Was designed to be as straight and flat as possible in order to facilitate fast direct travel between New York and the Delaware Water Gap. And that's why they needed these massive structures like the Paulinskill Viaduct. Other railroads would have had to cross the valley by going down and then coming up the other side, or they would have done what Blair's Railroad below us did, which is to snake along the path of the river and take a very non-direct route to the Delaware Water Gap. It actually travels, the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railroad actually travels to Delaware, New Jersey, then up, basically up the path of where Route 80 is now, and cross the Delaware Water Gap there. So it would have been a very curvy path, which would have necessitated slower travel, as opposed to this road, which could have accommodated trains. I believe this road's maximum speed throughout the entire cutoff was something along the lines of 70 miles per hour. I think there might be an exception over on the other side of the Delaware River, where there's this curvy piece of track, but most of the tracks trains could travel 70 miles per hour. And this track itself, this viaduct was large enough that would have been able to accommodate a double track. And for most of its history, the Lackawanna cutoff was double tracked. They actually removed the double track in the 60s or 70s, while leading up to their merger with the Erie Railroad, in anticipation of there being less freight traffic on this route. And here's a piece of graffiti that says, "Burn the land, boil the sea. You can't take the sky from me." And I guess from here you've got a good view of the sky. And you can probably hear there's a plane in the distance. I know that there's an airport over near Blairstown, so maybe it's a plane from there. And here is a Grand Theft Auto viaduct with some pictures of cars on the side, a motorcycle on the side, and I guess these are characters from the Grand Theft Auto game. And this is actually very interesting. This is a locomotive with the Erie Lackawanna colors. So if you notice the E with the diamond around it, it is actually both an E and an L. And the locomotive looks like a EMD F series with its bulldog nose. These locomotives were common in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.